Is that going? Yeah.
Okay, so this particular theme we've been working on of painting into the light, looking into the light. So I've been using this book for a bit of inspiration for some of the exercises. So this is our last session of this month. So we'll move on to a new topic next month if you fancy doing that. So the theme next month is portraits for anybody who wants to have a go at portraits. So I'll probably start with a drawing session and then gradually work into painting. But if you wanted to paint, start off straight into painting, you're very welcome to. And you can just apply the ideas if they're worthwhile to you, if it makes sense. Yeah, so that'll be thing. So what you probably need next month is some sort of photograph to work on. So I've got some images somewhere. Are we there now? So mine are mostly sort of cuttings out of magazines or things I've printed off the internet, that sort of thing. So you're very welcome to use any that I've got printed out. Some of them are a little bit shabby now because they're getting quite old. But sounds like me. But if you've got something particular you want to use, if you want to paint a particular person, like that. But otherwise, the main thing is have something that's not a bad one as a reference. Something that's nicely lit, a good size, but don't go for something like a really tiny, out of focus image. Give yourself a break, make it doable. I try and avoid some things like smiling and things like that, or teeth are difficult when painting portraits. They look very uncomfortable usually. So yeah, so that will be the theme for next month. So what I thought I'd look at today. So a few weeks ago, I talked a little bit about colour and colour mixing, and I talked about using the primary colours to mix secondary colours and mix greys and neutral colours as well. So I was looking at. So usually I do that from the point of view of each of the primaries, 2 yellows, 2 reds, 2 blues. One thing I found quite interesting in this book was she uses quite a lot of the secondary colours in her mixes. So she tends to use the primaries like the reds, the yellows and the blues, but also greens and purples and oranges. And I couldn't see much evidence of her using browns and blacks, which I tend to rely on quite a lot of brown. Not quite so much black, occasionally black, but so I thought that might be quite interesting, and I'm quite interested in just experimenting a bit myself with colour mixing. So that's what I've been doing with this particular demo. That was the one I did on Tuesday, for the Tuesday group.
That's good.
So I'm using acrylics again. So that was what I did last week in this session, or this session, the morning session, using acrylics. It could be, it doesn't matter particularly about the medium, it could be oil, if you prefer oil. But I thought it'd be quite interesting to try and just create some of those mixes with, so to get a really dark mix. So say we were working, maybe this bit here. What I've really done is used a little bit of all the different colours. So if I start with say purple, and then a little bit of orange, just looking at how I describe that is a kind of grey, perhaps a little bit of green in there too. So that gets me a really nice dark colour. What you can do, if you've got something like a bit of plastic, a bit of clear plastic, once you've got your mix ready, you can always pop it over the image and just kind of offer it up and see how it looks. I think this particular piece is slightly opaque, and that looks a little bit too dark. So we'll probably put a little bit of white in with that, and then just have a look again. That's looking a bit better. Looks a little bit too purple, so a tiny bit, maybe a little bit of yellow or a little bit of orange in there. And then that could go, no, that looks too light, so let's go a bit darker again. So I can kind of block in for this building here. And the way I started this was really just with a pastel pencil. So I just kind of sketched these lines here, just pastel pencil lines that I can quite easily rub out if I want to. So that's how I tend to start off. I need a bit bigger brush than that. So yeah, that gets me quite a nice dark mix. Let's try a similar sort of thing. Green in there. And we've got some sort of darker areas here. A bit darker at the base, around here. And then just lightening up a little bit as we're kind of going up. So the general approach is sort of block some colour in everywhere, and then this will dry reasonably quickly. And the nice thing about this is where it can be quite advantageous using acrylics in that they can dry quite quickly, and then I can then work in other details into that. So that's what I do here. You can see I've already painted this in. With the figures, what I quite liked about this was some of their shadows, and because the light's over here, these figures here, you've got the shadows just underneath them. The ones over to the left, it's sort of fanning out to the left, and then as you're coming around here, they're sort of radiating out to the right. So that's one thing I've been trying to do there, so perhaps put a couple more in here. And the other thing is, where the light's it's most intense, I think this is something I never used to do, but again, looking at this book, she seems to keep the figures a little bit lighter, and that seems to help to give you that impression of, you know, that being a very light area. So there's perhaps reflected lights in there. So if I'll perhaps pop another couple of figures in here, not too dark. That could go. That's one in there, and then there. Yeah. So that she's at the point where her shadow is coming over, starting to come over this way. This one's almost above, and then as we're working further out, somebody over here painting a little bit darker. They're kind of a little bit more stretched out, and yeah, shadows kind of coming off this direction. So a little bit on acrylics and colour mixing. Anybody got any questions? Anybody want to ask anything?
No question. I just think that's really cool though, that idea of the figures being lighter in the light. It's nice actually.
Yeah. I think it helps. It really seems to help. I know looking back at some of my older paintings where I almost like painted them really dark and they just read like almost look like a little hole in the canvas. And sometimes with a photograph, it almost exaggerates the contrast. So sometimes these figures appear darker than if I would have been there. I think I probably would see a bit more light in them. So it's just something to be aware of when you're working with photos, that you can tweak and also exaggerate those tones, make them slightly lighter in the middle. Yeah.
We've got the light. Did you paint that on, or did you leave the canvas?
No, I painted that on that bit. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I kind of primed the board a bit for this kind of pinky grey colour. So I basically went over a couple of boards yesterday, so I had something to demonstrate with. But yeah, so yeah, that's painted on. It's white with just a little bit of yellow, just to keep that a little bit warmer. Yeah. And then these, perhaps a little bit cooler. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, let you crack on then.
Okay.